He dug a grave beside the river and said, "If I'm wrong, bury me here too." The rope felt alive in Samuel Harrow's hands, coarse as regret and twice as heavy. He'd been testing nooses since dawn, each not a small prayer to get it right. Quick and clean. That's what he owed them, the guilty and the innocent alike. Though after 15 years of dropping men through trapdoors, he'd learned that innocence was just another word for not proven guilty yet. Below the gallows, the Colorado River ran dark and slow, like it was in no hurry to reach wherever rivers went to die. Samuel watched a piece of driftwood spin in the current, trapped in an eddy, going nowhere. He knew the feeling. "Mister." The voice came small and sharp, like a needle through cloth. Samuel didn't turn. Children had no business near the gallows, but they came anyway, drawn by the same dark curiosity that made folks pack the square on hanging days. "Mister, you can't hang him." Now Samuel turned. A boy stood at the foot of the scaffold steps, maybe 10 years old, maybe 12. Hard to tell with kids these days. Hunger made them small, but life made them old. This one had the look of both, skinny as a fence post with eyes like an old man's. "Get on home, boy." Samuel went back to his rope, running it through his hands, feeling for weak spots. This ain't no place for children. He didn't do it. Samuel sighed. They all said that. Every mother, every wife, every child of every man he'd ever hanged. He didn't blame them. Love made liars of good people. Judge says different. Samuel coiled the rope careful, like it might bite if handled wrong. Jury says different. Law says different. The law's wrong. That stopped him. Not the words. He'd heard those before. But the way the boy said it, torn pants, no shoes, dirt under his nails like he'd been digging. But his eyes were clear as window glass, the kind that saw through things instead of just at them. "What's your name, boy?" "Tom. Tom Garrett." Garrett. Samuel knew that name. Knew it from the trial, from the words spoken in the courthouse. The murdered man had been James Garrett. This boy's father, most likely, which made no sense at all. "Your pa was James Garrett?" The boy nodded, his thin face tightening. "Was. And you're saying Josiah Mills didn't kill him?" "I'm saying what I saw." Tom's voice stayed steady, but his hands made fists at his sides. "I was there, hid in the hayloft when the shooting started. Saw the man who done it, and it weren't Josiah Mills." Samuel set down the rope, gave the boy his full attention now. In 15 years, he'd never had a victim's kin speak for the condemned. Never had a child look him in the eye and speak against their own father's justice. "You testified at the trial?" "Tried to." Tom's mouth twisted bitter. "Lawyer said I was too young. Said I was confused by grief. Said children don't make reliable witnesses. Maybe you were confused. Losing a father, I know what I saw." The words came out hard as hammered iron. "Man who killed my pa had a scar across his neck, like someone tried to hang him once and failed. Josiah Mills got no scar like that." Samuel felt something cold walk up his spine. He'd seen that scar on a man who'd ridden through town the day after the murder. Claimed he was heading to California, looking for gold. Had the look of a killer about him, the kind that made even hard men step aside. "Why didn't you tell the sheriff about the scar?" "I did." Tom's eyes went darker. He said scars can fade. Said I was making things up to make sense of senseless things. Said Josiah Mills was found with my pa's watch, and that was evidence enough. Evidence. Samuel knew about evidence. Knew how it could be put places, how watches could change hands for all kinds of reasons. But knowing and proving were different animals, and the law fed on proof, not doubt. "Even if you're right," Samuel said slowly, "the judge has spoken. The date's set. 3 days from now, Josiah Mills hangs. That's the law." "Then the law's wrong," Tom said again. "And you'll be the one who makes it wrong forever." The boy turned and walked away, his bare feet silent on the dusty ground. Samuel watched him go, this child who'd lost his father and was about to lose whatever faith he had left in the world's justice. The rope lay coiled at Samuel's feet like a sleeping snake. He'd tested it true. It would do its job come hanging day. The question was whether he would. He thought about his own father, dead these 20 years. A hard man who'd taught hard lessons. "A man's only as good as his word," he used to say, "and his word's only as good as his actions." Samuel had given his word to uphold the law, had sworn an oath when they made him executioner. But what happened when the law asked you to kill an innocent man? What happened when a child's truth weighed heavier than a court's verdict? The sun climbed higher, casting the gallows shadow across the ground like a clock hand marking time. 3 days. 3 days to decide whether he was a servant of law or justice. They weren't always the same thing. He was learning. He picked up the rope again, felt its weight. Every rope had 2 ends, one for the condemned, one for the man who held it. Both could hang you in their way. Down by the river, Tom Garrett stood throwing stones at the water, each splash a small violence against the current's calm. A boy without a father, pleading for a stranger's life. It made no sense, unless the boy knew something about truth that grown men had forgotten. Samuel coiled the rope one last time, hung it on its hook. 3 days to decide. 3 days to choose between duty and conscience. The river kept running, carrying its secrets to the sea. And somewhere in town, Josiah Mills sat in a cell, counting heartbeats he might not deserve to lose. The sun was dying slow when she came. Samuel watched it bleed orange across the horizon, painting the dust and dead grass the color of old rust. His rocking chair creaked its familiar complaint as he shifted, bringing the whiskey glass to his lips. The burn was good, clean. It helped him forget the way a badge used to feel against his chest. Then he saw her, a small figure walking up the dirt path to his cabin, moving with the strange purpose of someone who had already made up their mind about something important. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, maybe 11. Her dress was gray with washing and mended in 3 places. Her boots kicked up little clouds with each step. Samuel set down his glass. The girl stopped at the bottom of his porch steps. She didn't speak at first, just stood there studying him with eyes that belonged on someone who had lived longer. Dark eyes, steady and unblinking. Her small hands hung at her sides, and he noticed how her dress pockets bulged with weight, pulling the fabric down. "You're Samuel Ward," she said. "Not a question. Used to be. You were a lawman. Used to be that too." The girl reached in her right pocket and pulled out a smooth river stone, gray-green and flat. She set it on the bottom step, then another from her left pocket, placing it beside the first. The stones made soft sounds against the wood. "My name is Mary," she said, still laying out stones. "Mary Thorne. My papa was Matthew Thorne." Samuel knew that name. Everyone in Cedar Ridge knew that name now. Matthew Thorne, the man who had shot James Brennan behind the saloon 2 weeks back. The man sitting in a cell, waiting for the rope. The whiskey in Samuel's stomach turned sour. "I'm sorry about your father," he said, because what else was there to say to a child whose papa was going to hang? Mary looked up at him then, and her eyes held something fierce. "My papa didn't kill nobody." The words hung in the air between them like dust motes in dying light. Samuel felt the old instinct stir, the lawman's need to measure words and weigh truth. But that part of him was supposed to be dead, buried with his badge and gun. Trial said different, he said carefully. Trial was lies. Mary pulled out another stone, heavier this time. She had to use both hands to set it on the step. "Sheriff Colton killed Mr. Brennan. I saw it. I was there." The rocking chair stopped its motion. Samuel leaned forward, studying the child's face. No tears, no trembling, just that steady, terrible certainty that came from seeing something that couldn't be unseen. That's a dangerous thing to say. Truth usually is. Mary kept laying out stones, building a small cairn on his steps. "Papa was teaching me to skip stones at the river. We heard shouting from behind the saloon. Papa told me to stay put, but I followed. I'm good at being quiet." Samuel's throat felt dry. He wanted another drink, but didn't reach for the glass. "I hid behind a rain barrel," Mary continued. "Saw Sheriff Colton and Mr. Brennan arguing about money. Mr. Brennan said he was done paying, said he'd tell everyone about the sheriff's arrangement with the cattle thieves. That's when Sheriff Colton shot him, 2 times in the chest." The girl's voice stayed steady, but her hand shook slightly as she placed another stone. Samuel noticed her fingernails were chewed down to the quick. "Your papa came running when he heard the shots. Sheriff was standing over the body when Papa found him." Sheriff pointed his gun at Papa, told him he'd just witnessed a murder. Papa's murder of Mr. Brennan. Said he'd kill me if Papa didn't agree. The whiskey glass caught the last light, amber and accusing. Samuel had poured that drink to forget, but here was this child making him remember everything. Duty, justice, the weight of truth. Who else knows what you saw? Nobody. Mary set the last stone on the pile. Sheriff said he'd hurt Mama if I talked. But Mama died of fever last week, and now they're going to hang Papa in 3 days. Samuel closed his eyes. He could feel it all coming back. The burden of knowing, the price of choosing. He'd walked away from that life for good reasons. The bottle knew those reasons. The empty cabin knew them. His dead wife's grave knew them best of all. Why come to me? Mary climbed the steps then, each footfall deliberate. She reached into her dress pocket one more time, but this time she didn't pull out a stone. It was a rosary, darkwood worn smooth by handling. This was Papa's, she said. He prays with it every night in that cell. Prays for truth. Prays for help. She held it out to him. Mrs. Garrett at the general store said you used to be the most honest lawman in 3 counties. Said you'd know what to do. Samuel didn't take the rosary. Couldn't. His hands felt too heavy, too stained with his own failures. I'm not that man anymore. Maybe not. Mary set the rosary on the porch rail beside his whiskey glass. But you're the only man who might listen. The sun was gone now, leaving only purple shadows and the first stars. Mary turned to go, but stopped at the top of the steps. Those stones are for Papa, she said quietly. 1 for each year I've been alive. If he hangs, I'll bring them to his grave. But I'm hoping I won't need to. She walked away then, small figure disappearing into the gathering dark. Samuel sat in his chair, staring at the cairn she'd built on his steps. The whiskey glass threw shadows. The rosary caught what little light remained. He reached for the glass first, then stopped. His hand hovered between the whiskey and the rosary, between forgetting and remembering, between the man he'd become and the man he used to be. The stones waited on his steps like a conscience made solid. Inside the cabin, his gun hung on its peg, his badge sat in its drawer. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, a little girl walked home alone, carrying the weight of truth and the hope that someone, anyone, might help her bear it. Samuel picked up the rosary. The beads were smooth and warm, as if they still held the heat of desperate prayers. Tomorrow would bring choices. Tonight, he sat with the weight of small hands and heavy stones, knowing that some visitors don't leave when they walk away. The cottonwoods along the riverbank stood like mourners in the darkness, their leaves whispering prayers Samuel couldn't understand. He'd been digging for an hour, maybe 2. Time meant nothing when you were excavating truth from reluctant earth. Each thrust of the shovel sent pain shooting through his shoulder where the old bullet wound lived, a reminder of another night when he'd chosen justice over safety. The girl, Lila, held the lantern steady, though her hand shook. 11 years old, maybe 12, hard to tell with children who'd grown up too fast. Her dress was patched in 3 places, clean but tired, like everything else in this forgotten corner of Texas. She hadn't spoken since they'd left her family's cabin, just led him here to this bend in the river where the willows dipped their branches into water that ran black as oil. My pa used to fish here, she said finally, her voice barely louder than the current. Before he started asking questions about them cattle rustlers. Before Sheriff Dalton told him to mind his own business. Samuel paused, wiping sweat from his brow with a sleeve already damp with river mist. The blood moon hung overhead like God's own eye, red and unblinking, watching him dig up what others had tried to bury. He'd seen that moon before, over battlefields and gallows, over burning homesteads and shallow graves. It never brought anything but sorrow. How deep, he asked. 3 feet, maybe 4. They were in a hurry. The shovel hit something that wasn't rock or root. Samuel's heart didn't quicken. It had forgotten how years ago. He brushed dirt away with careful hands, revealing burlap, then beneath it a boot. Good leather, barely worn. The kind of working man saved months to buy. Turn away, he told the girl, but she shook her head. Already know what's down there. Been knowing for 2 months. He uncovered the rest slowly, methodically. Two bodies, a man and a woman. The man still wore his Sunday shirt, though it was stained dark with more than dirt. The woman's hair spread around her face like she was floating in dark water, peaceful if you didn't look at the bullet hole in her temple. "That's Mary Carson," Lila whispered. "She worked at the hotel. Said she saw Sheriff Dalton meeting with strangers in the middle of the night. Said they had running irons and talked about moving cattle across the border." Samuel studied the bodies with eyes that had seen too much death to be shocked, but not enough to stop caring. These weren't the first witnesses to end up in unmarked graves. Wouldn't be the last either, unless someone did something about it. Problem was that someone always ended up underground too. "If I'm wrong, bury me here too," he said to the darkness, to the river, to whatever god might be listening. "But if I'm right." "You're not wrong," Lila said. "My pa kept a journal. Wrote down everything he saw, everyone who disappeared. It's hidden in our root cellar, wrapped in oilcloth." The wind picked up, sending ripples across the water that caught the blood moon's light like scattered coins. Samuel began covering the bodies again, each shovelful of dirt a promise to the dead. He couldn't leave them exposed, couldn't let the coyotes and buzzards have them. But he couldn't report it either, not to a sheriff whose stars shine bright with other people's blood. "Why trust me?" he asked the girls he worked. "I'm just a stranger passing through." "Because you got sad eyes," she said simply. "Like my pa had. Like you've seen too much, but still care about seeing more. Sheriff Dalton, his eyes are empty. Nothing behind them but hunger." Samuel finished filling the grave, patted the earth down gentle-like. These people deserved better than an unmarked plot by the river, but for now, this would have to do. He stuck 2 branches in the ground to mark the spot, a crude cross that would last until the next flood. "Go home," he told Lila. "Don't speak of this to anyone. Not your ma, not your friends, not even your prayers. Can you do that?" She nodded, solemn as a judge. "What are you going to do?" He looked toward town, where a few windows still glowed yellow against the night. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Sheriff Dalton slept sound, his conscience clean as his badge. Tomorrow he'd make his rounds, tip his hat to the ladies, joke with the men at the saloon. Nobody would mention the missing. Nobody ever did. "I'm going to ask some questions," Samuel said. "Visit that journal your pa kept. Then maybe pay a visit to some folks who think their secrets are buried deep enough. They'll kill you. Maybe. But sometimes a man's got to choose between living safe and living right." Lila handed him the lantern, its light wavering like faith itself. "There's something else," she said. "Sheriff's got a meeting tomorrow night. Heard him talking about it at the general store. Said something about the biggest score yet, about moving a whole herd before the federal marshals arrive." Samuel felt something cold settle in his chest, colder than the river wind. Federal marshals meant someone else had noticed the stealing, the killing. Meant time was running short for everyone, the guilty and those who stood against them. "Get home safe," he said. "Lock your doors. If something happens to me, you take that journal and ride hard for the county seat. Find Judge Morrison. He's the only honest law left in these parts." The girl disappeared into the darkness, quiet as a ghost. Samuel stood alone by the river, the lantern casting long shadows that danced with the willow branches. He thought about the bodies beneath his feet, about all the bodies that lined the trail of his life. Once he believed in justice, in the law's power to protect the innocent. Now he knew better. Justice was what you carved out with your own hands, paid for with your own blood. The river murmured its ancient song, carrying secrets downstream toward the Gulf, toward the endless ocean where all stories eventually ended. But not yet. Not tonight. He started the walk back to town, each step measured and certain. Tomorrow would bring its own troubles, a sheriff to face, evidence to gather, probably bullets to dodge. But tonight, he'd given 2 souls a proper burial and gained an ally in a brave child who shouldn't have to be brave. The blood moon followed him, painting his shadow red across the dusty ground. In the distance, a coyote howled, long and mournful. By morning, everything would change. The question was whether anyone would be left standing when the dust settled. The river ran red in the early light, though Samuel knew it was just the sunrise painting lies across the water. He stood on the bank where he'd dug last night, the shovel still in his hand like it had grown there, become part of him. The crude crosses he'd planted looked smaller in daylight, fragile as the promises men made to the dead. Behind him, the town stirred awake. Smoke rose from chimneys, doors creaked open, horses nickered in their stalls. Normal sounds of normal life. Except nothing was normal when you knew what lay beneath the surface. Like the river, calm on top, but underneath currents that could drag a man down and never let go. The journal weighed heavy in his coat pocket. Lila's father had been thorough, careful. Names, dates, cattle brands that changed in the night. Men who asked questions and disappeared like smoke. Sheriff Dalton's name appeared on every page, written in the steady hand of a man who knew he was signing his own death warrant, but kept writing anyway. Samuel heard footsteps on the path behind him. Didn't turn. Either it was someone coming to kill him or someone coming to talk. Either way, turning wouldn't change what was about to happen. Figured I'd find you here. Sheriff Dalton's voice was smooth as good whiskey, just as likely to poison you if you weren't careful. Early morning walk, Marshal Wade? So he knew. Of course he knew. In towns this small, secrets traveled faster than horses. Not a marshal anymore, Samuel said, still watching the river. Haven't been for 3 years. Badge or no badge, you still got that look. That way of standing like you're measuring the world for a coffin. Dalton moved closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. Heard you were asking questions yesterday. Dangerous habit in a town like this. Samuel finally turned. The sheriff looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd sold his soul so many times he'd forgotten what it was worth. His badge caught the morning light, polished bright enough to blind. His gun sat easy on his hip, and his hand stayed close to it, casual-like, the way a snake stays casual before it strikes. Found some interesting things, Samuel said. Things that might interest those federal marshals coming through. Dalton's smile didn't reach his eyes. Never did, according to Lila. Federal marshals got no jurisdiction here. This is my town. My law. Your law. Samuel tasted the words like bitter medicine. Is that what you call it when witnesses end up in shallow graves? When good men disappear for noticing too much? The smile faded. You're standing on dangerous ground, Wade. Ground that swallowed better men than you. I've been buried before. Dug myself out. Can do it again if I have to. They stood there, two men on opposite sides of a line that had nothing to do with the law and everything to do with right and wrong. The river flowed between them, carrying its secrets toward the sea. A crow called from the cottonwoods, harsh and mocking. There's a way this can end peaceful, Dalton said. You ride out today. Forget what you think you know. Live to see another sunrise. And if I don't, then you'll learn what this river really knows. What's been keeping from me all these years? Samuel shifted his grip on the shovel. Such a simple tool. Could dig a grave or cave in a skull, depending on how you swung it. Funny thing about rivers. They got a way of giving up their secrets. Floods come, banks erode. Bodies float up when you least expect them. Not if they're weighted right. The admission hung between them like a confession in church. Samuel saw the moment Dalton realized what he'd said, saw the decision flash across his face like lightning. The sheriff's hand moved for his gun, fast as a rattler. But Samuel had been waiting for it. The shovel swung up, caught Dalton's wrist just as the gun cleared leather. The crack of breaking bone was sharp in the morning air. The gun spun away, landed in the mud at the water's edge. Dalton dropped to his knees, cradling his wrist. You're dead. You know that? My men will hunt you down. Maybe. Samuel picked up the gun, checked the cylinder. 6 bullets, all ready to kill. But first, we're going to have a conversation. About names and journals. About cattle with change brands. About Mary Carson and Tom Hartley and all the others you planted along this river. You got no proof. Just the word of a dead man and a little girl. Got more than that. Samuel pulled out the journal, let Dalton see it. Got dates. Got figures. Got enough to interest those federal boys when they arrive tomorrow. Yeah, I know about the meeting tonight. Know about the herd you're planning to move. The sheriff's face went pale as old bone. They'll kill you for this. All of them. You can't arrest them all. Don't plan to. Samuel tucked the gun into his belt, kept the shovel ready. Planned to give them a choice. Same choice I'm giving you. Confess, face trial, maybe live long enough to see a cell. Or resist and feed the river you love so much. A fish jumped in the shallows, silver flash in the red light. The town bell rang 6 times, calling the faithful to their daily bread. Life going on, unaware that its foundations were cracking. You think you're righteous, Dalton spat. Think you're better than me. But you're just another killer with a cause. Maybe so. Difference is I bury my dead proper. Mark their graves. Remember their names. Samuel gestured toward the hidden graves with his shovel. Can you say the same? The sheriff's silence was answer enough. In the distance, horses approached. Could be Dalton's men. Could be concerned citizens. Could be trouble either way. Samuel made his choice, dropped the shovel, pulled the journal from his pocket, and started walking toward town. Behind him, Dalton struggled to his feet, broken wrist held tight against his chest. This isn't over, Wade. No, Samuel said without looking back. It's just beginning. The river flowed on, carrying its secrets and its dead, waiting to see which way the current would turn. Some graves held bodies. Others held the hope of justice. By nightfall, they'd know which kind would be filled.